We are live. I'm doing. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 30 of the Layover. Tonight, Scott's all about cobblers. Lindsay's back.
Finally.
And I talk about a Blackfly.
One life for the revolution. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up.
Welcome to the Layover Live, everybody. That was the bit I was meant to say beforehand. Linz, welcome back.
Thanks.
It's great to have you back. Nothing's gone wrong.
I've had mixed reviews and mixed reports actually on you two.
Everything went well. Everything went really well. All the buttons got pushed in all of the right orders.
On the right time?
The right time. Scotty only swore a few times and made some off-color jokes 10 or 15 times, which is pretty good. And there we go. And that's about it. Scotty, how you doing?
Scott, you're in my favourite place.
I am. Welcome to my real layover in Atlanta. I know there is a bit of a lag today, so we're going to have to live with that. Welcome to Atlanta. I'm loving it here. It's 30 degrees, and with my opaque skin, I can go outside for about 30 seconds at a time before turning into a lobster.
And they love peaches and chicken. How's breakfast? I think is cobbler. Have you had cobbler this morning? Here we go. This stuff.
You know what? Breakfast here is an experience. I had fruit this morning because I am, body is a temple and all that. But this is peach cobbler with fried chicken. And on the menu for breakfast this morning, there was those biscuit things with gravy, which I really don't get. There was fried chicken on the top of sweet waffles with maple syrup on the top. Chicken and waffles for breakfast with maple syrup. It's just absolutely, don't get it.
There we go. You heard it here first. That's culinary advice from a Scottish person. So, Scotty, Oshkosh, and we've missed it. But oh my goodness, what a lot has been going on.
Oh.
What have you seen?
There's so much been going on that I think we need to actually have a special show about Oshkosh. I think this week we need to record a one-off special show for Oshkosh to put out maybe next week or sometime, because there has been so much there and we've missed so much actually. But we'll give a little bit of an insight tonight on some of the cooler bits and some of the bits which are absolutely bonkers. But first, what's this Blackline nonsense?
Well, and there we go. Look, that's aeroplanes leaving Oshkosh.
Wow.
Look at that. And that's the site itself, which, if you've not been there, it's, you've got to go there. But yeah, Backfly, look at this thing. So nothing to do with gardening. We've watched the video on this a couple of times. We can't really figure out what it's for. It's kind of part drone, part fly it yourself. There's a 2-day training course to fly the thing. It's an urban air mobility vehicle designed in Canada. I mean, it looks quite cool. Those wing things don't move. We'll put a little video in a special on it. So it kind of lifts off vertically, but pitched up very, very steeply. So it looks quite uncomfortable, or certainly a little surprising. It's not a tilt rotor, not a tilt wing. It's got 8 engines and 8 batteries.
And one person.
And just one person. What do you reckon, Scotty? You think you'll get in it?
No, is the honest answer. I don't think I'll get in it. Not if I keep eating peach cobbler for breakfast with fried chicken. I just find this really odd. So That's not a tilt wing. That looks like that's kind of transitioning to forward flight. So it's not tilting at all.
Yeah, so that's mad. And then we've got this thing. So, Scotty, you know a bit about this one, don't you? Volocopter.
Yeah, well, actually, I know quite a bit about this. This is the Volocopter. So this flew at Oshkosh. So this is not made up. You know, this thing flew at Oshkosh. It's a 2-seater. They're going to start operations in, I think it's Paris and Singapore by the end of 2023. 18 rotors, 9 batteries, and that stupid ring that's there actually provides lift. It's a bizarre situation where actually it's a bit like a helicopter disc in that if they're moving forward, it provides a bit of lift. You do need to be a pilot for this one, so none of that 2-hour training nonsense and then off you go. Actually, this needs a pilot's license, but the plan is to eventually remove the pilot, and you and your buddy can just jump in this, press a button, say, take me to the supermarket, and off you go.
Yeah, no smelly
that's
pilot.
Sounds great.
This was the I've put this up because this was the test vehicle for it. And they say that they're very agile and that they've been, moving at pace and designing this thing, without too many sort of rules and regs holding them back. So I'd just like to point out that that's like a Pilates ball attached by string with a blanket over the top of it to an office chair, and he's held on by what looks like a piece of red, I don't know what that is really, like webbing strap. Looks good. Brave.
I feel like if piloting, commercial aircraft doesn't really work out for Scott, then plan B.
Straight on the Pilates ball. The powered Pilates ball. Pretty amazing stuff. Anyway, look, cool looking aeroplanes. DA50. This is the DA50RG from Europe, soon to be assembled in Canada. It does look very good. It's basically 5-seater plus full fuel. It's big. It's 44-foot span, which is almost as big as a PC-12 span-wise. Just to sort of put that in context, that's 10 foot more than a Bonanza, another 5 foot on each wing.
How much is one of these going to set you back?
Well,
yeah, here's the biggie.
Because I got really excited. I thought I definitely need one of these. And they said, well, base price 1.2 million with all the bits and pieces, 1.5, 1.7, something like that. It's effectively a single engine DA62. It has this motor in it, which is a Continental Jet A burning diesel, and actually looks like an automotive engine, which is really cool. But yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. I like this. There's a great comment here.
Scott, have you got a cup in front of you?
I do. In fact, I just have had Starbucks deliver and it didn't cost me €5. So
€5.
Thank you very much for that, Danny.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's the DA50RG, which does look really cool, and actually from a money point of view, it's basically the same money as a Bonanza. So there we go. How about this, Scotty?
Wow.
This is scrappy.
You know what? I think this is bonkers. Yeah, I think this is absolutely bonkers. As you know, Mike Patey made Draco the big red aeroplane. He had an accident with it on takeoff, didn't he? A bit of a gusty takeoff, and he had an accident which sadly wrote off the aircraft, but thankfully he was okay. He's come up with this. Now, that is at the top there for those who are uninitiated. Most airplanes have flaps at the back, which help with lift and when you slow the airplane down, and you have slats at the front, and normally most airplanes will have one slat. Which will go across the span, or a number of slats that will go across the span of the front of the wing. This mechanism, which Mike's invented, actually gives him 3 slats, which makes this, I think he refers to it as a super stall or a hyper stall airplane, which can go very, very slow and produce huge amounts of lift. But the amazing thing that I love is the cockpit mark. I know you're a traditionalist and you like your dials, but that for me, holy moly, it's like the Starship Enterprise.
You get sunburnt in there, Scotty. There's so much energy coming off those screens. You've got to get over to Mike Patey's channel because he's an amazing engineer. He's unbelievably can do, and he's got the sort of build of this thing all mapped out on there. It's got an 8-cylinder, 500 and something odd horsepower IO 780 Lycoming, so it's bored out, and it's got a kneeling gear, so the gear can kind of flatten itself. It's got 20 inches of show. It's mad. The whole thing's crazy, which is really cool. This is quite nice. This is an Italian company called Blackshape. Blackshape, yeah, everything's called Black something or other. And they have an airplane called the Prime, and then this is their sort of certified version. They seem to be aiming at the bottom end of the military trainer market. They've definitely upped their cockpit game as well. I mean, that's looking very, very military. Wow. They reckon it's sort of $750 million. It's a funny company because, I mean, the thing looks so beautiful and it looks just fantastic. I would have thought they should be selling hundreds and hundreds of them, but I haven't really seen any around yet. But who knows? So we'll have a little.
Is that piston or turbine, Mark?
It is 160 horsepower. It's small, you see, so it's small, low cost for piston engine. They've painted the inlets black, and it almost looks like a turbine exhaust pipe. You can see what they're doing there. But it does look cool, and let's face it, Italians make some good-looking airplanes. Scott, I know you're excited by this.
Yeah, I'm really excited by this. So I could never build an airplane. I'll be honest with you, right? I can barely put the wires on the plug. You know that. I caused a fire once in the house because I wired the plug wrong. So building an airplane is never going to be me. But if I was going to build an airplane, it would be the RV-15. Now, they've been very, very coy about how much they've given away about this new airplane. But this is going to be the competitor for the Carbon Cub. It's going to be a self-build Carbon Cub, effectively, I think. Although they haven't talked about the engine, they haven't talked about the number of seats. All they've said is it's going to be a high-wing dish plane, and everybody's getting excited. And they're already sold out. So I don't know I had a little look at the website this afternoon. If you want one of these now, you can't have delivery until 2024 because people have bought the kits. And they haven't even said what it is yet.
It does strike me that on the sort of Thursday before Oshkosh, they said, should we just pretend we've invented an airplane and we'll just announce it, but with no details at all, and see how much of a bow wave we can create on this. But yeah, basically, I reckon it might be 4-seat. I'm going to go for 4-seat. I think it's going to be a 180, 185 killer, really. And unleaded fuel is a thing. We'll talk about that because that could be transformative to the light airplane aviation industry. Might even hold off kind of drones on autonomy a bit. Autonomy, there's loads of... Garmin have actually released a product called Autonomy, which puts a bit of AI, a bit of autonomy in regular legacy airplanes, which looks amazing. And the deal is, if you had an engine failure, you press a button, it will fly the airplane best glide and navigate it over the best bit of ground to give you the best chances of survival or making an airport, which all seems pretty darn cool to me.
It does seem like a general kind of shift in a massive sort of leap in technology, and a kind of shift of Oshkosh this year is a bit more no pilots, less training requirement. Yeah. All this kind of new kit that's coming in. I don't know if it's the way we presented it but it definitely feels like something's changing. It really does. Quite amazing, really. And more people getting airborne, I suspect, if that's to be believed, if you can literally rock up 2 days, no pilot's license required, off you go. And it all seems like it's still just a little bit secretive. Like, we've kind of got, here's a taster of this technology, or here's, a snapshot of what we got, but we don't really want to give too much away. Maybe, and I'm not sure that's a good thing, because I think the aviation system kind of works on I don't know. It works on openness, really, doesn't it, Scotty?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit that, and I mean, we talked a little bit about this last week, didn't we? About the lawsuit between the two urban air mobility companies, and I think the secrecy comes from the fact that everyone's worried that their product isn't going to be the product to hit the market at the right time, and Volocopter, Joby, and we know some others are all vying for that Uber of the air type air taxi position, and because there is really only one thing you can do, it's going to have rotors or ducted fan, and it's going to have a battery. So they're all going to look similar, I think. And I think the secrecy is nobody wants to give their hand away until they're able to give their hand away and have a product which is marketable, I think.
So it'd be anyway. I think I don't know if you're going to join us for the Oshkosh special. It'd be nice if you would. Like, put it this way, you need to in order to keep us on the straight and narrow. But I just think it's a changing sky, isn't it? And both of those things, that openness and the fact that the sort of world's changing a bit, I think is a nice link into our guest. If I'm really honest, should we get him on? I don't want to go on too long because he said he's going to ask us some questions. I am quite nervous about him asking something very technical about the Airbus or something like that. So I'm going to read his intro, only because I spent time, actually writing the thing. So tonight on the Layover, we've got a YouTube star, and he's a star actually, and he's an educator. He's originally from Sweden. He left his Viking childhood behind him for the warm comforts of the Captain Rona.
Have we lost them? Petter, it looks like it might be me and you.
Wow.
I don't know what happened there.
No.
We were really worried about them not coming in. Petter, welcome to the Layover Live. I didn't expect to be. Actually, our contingency was that I was going to be the one who would be falling out if the internet went. But it looks like it would happen the other way. Petter, welcome. We won't wait for Mark and Lindsay. We'll just push on if you're happy. And we know that there's a little bit of a delay, so if you just bear with me on that. Petter, everyone we've been lucky enough to have on this show, and we've met over the last 30 shows, has shared with us how they got into aviation. For some, it was sudden and certain. For others, it was a bit slower and more complicated. What's your story?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I was really excited to get a message that I was going to be on the show, actually, because obviously I've been following you on Twitter for years, so I know about your backstory. Well, I don't know about your backstory, but I know a little bit about you. At least it feels like that when you have to do with social media. Well, I started off back in Sweden. I don't know how far you want me to go back, really, with this story, because I can go on forever.
Go back to the beginning, because Mark and Lindsay are back. Welcome back. What did Mark press?
But honestly, I pressed nothing. Our internet packed up.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit. It looks a little bit shaky still. So we'll see how long we will get to keep you here. So the way that the way I started was that, well, I was a regular kid back in northern Sweden. I come from a little small town called Örnsköldsvik, up by the eastern northern coastline in Sweden. And my dad was working for an insurance company up there, which covered northern Sweden. For anyone who knows their geography, you know that northern Sweden is actually huge. And it's divided into these small cities, mostly along the coastline, but also a little bit inland, over vast distances of forest and nothing else. So he was driving that, and after a while thought maybe there's a quicker way to get in between these places. So he actually got himself a private pilot license in order to drive himself when he was flying in, well, when the weather was good and so on. So he went up and started training for his private pilot license. And obviously me being around 13 at the time, I thought that was hugely exciting. So I went with him up to the little flying club in Örnsköldsvik where he was training. And I got to fly with him a couple of times. And the more you do, you know this, the more you're into aviation, the more likely it is that you're going to be bit by the bug, that you'll not be able to kind of contain yourself and keep yourself outside of it. So that's what happened to me. And my parents saw that. So for my 14th birthday, they gave me an introduction flight, so an introduction lesson. And it was one of those, when you can point to a single thing in your life that kind of changed the trajectory of the rest of your life. This was it for me, because this introduction flight happened on a beautiful autumn evening, not a movement in the air, no clouds, in the afternoon. And we went out and we went flying over my hometown and my home village and did steep turns, a little bit stuff like that. And then on the way back, I expected the instructor to take over the controls. But instead, he kind of patted me through the approach and all the way into the flare, into the landing. So I landed the aircraft, obviously with him in the controls, but did everything by myself, as I had seen my dad do, and I had been reading up on things like you do. And that was it for me. From that point onwards, there was no turning back. So I moved on from there. I had a singular purpose. And when you're 14 years old and you have one purpose with your life, it's very easy. Everything becomes very easy because that's the only thing you care about. So I started working, getting my grades up and stuff, because I knew that there was a government-sponsored program in Sweden. Sweden is one of those few countries in the world where they think, being quite socialistic country, that, if we sponsor people to become doctors or engineers, we should sponsor people to become pilots as well.
Wow.
But fantastic. But they also said we also should see how many pilots we actually need, which meant that in the case when I was at that age, there was 30 spots available in the country. So very, very few.
So how did you make yourself one of those 30 people? How did you put yourself in that position?
I worked my butt off. That's how I got myself in that position. No, but it's true, because I've never been I haven't had it hard in school, but I definitely didn't have it easy, especially in the natural sciences like mathematics and physics, which we know are crucial in order to become pilots. So I knew this. I knew that I needed to work, but I had this goal that I need to have, in order for me to have a chance to get into this, I need to have a perfect score on my grades. Okay, that's the only chance to guarantee that I could be called for an interview, because there was a further selection process after that. So I worked from an average student kind of grades when I was about 14, 15, until very good grades when I was 16. And then when I was 17, the first year in the Swedish gymnasium, I got a perfect score on my grades, which guaranteed me, and that was not like I worked. I can't even describe how many hours I spent in the books in order to get perfect grades, especially in mathematics. So then I was called for an interview to the school, and I managed to pass through the rest of the psychometric testing and stuff that came to that. So I actually started flying when I was 17.
And I mean, it sounds like your trial flight instructor was quite inspirational, but that whole process of training, it'd be interesting to know the kind of course that you went through and whether you had particularly inspiring instructors or some that were less inspiring.
Well, I mean, this school had contracted in what was called Bromma Flygskola. Then it was the largest aviation school in Sweden, based in Stockholm, Bromma, in the city airport that they have in Stockholm still. And they were contracted out to Västerås, where this school was located. So I actually moved away from home when I was 17 to live in Västerås and to do schooling, which was still the natural science degree that I had to do, but also a full CPL IR, not ME, but CPL IR.
Wow.
That was included in the course. So you had to do both those courses in the same time as I would normally do only the natural science one. So we did 2 days of normal school, no, 3 days of normal school the first year, 2 days of flying. And the second year, there was 3 days of flying and 2 days of normal school. And it was what was we called an integrated training now. All right. And fantastic instructors. And obviously, if you're 17 years old, all you want to do is be a pilot, and you're there and you actually get to fly on school time. It doesn't get better than that.
That is awesome.
And I guess in the UK, many people sort of undertake, flying training, and they invest and spend a lot of money with no real guarantee of a job at the end.
Yes.
For you guys, I guess if you passed the course, then you knew that you would be on a good path into an airline, or what sort of opportunities that you would get at the end?
No, this was not coupled to an airline in any kind of way. This was just as if you were trained to an engineer. You got your degree. In this case, you got your licenses, and then you were on your own. But of course, being that the government paid for all of this, except for accommodation and stuff, we were in a very good position later on. However, I graduated in 2001, right? Which was not a great time to graduate with a pilot license. It was, but we'll probably get to that in a second. But the training in itself was fantastic, very professionally done, and we were like, I from there on, I was working towards which airline. We all thought that we were going to go towards Scandinavian Airline Systems, SAS, because being the national airline of Sweden and Norway and Denmark, that's what you thought you were going to go against. But they were not doing well already then, and they haven't been since.
Not unsurprising.
Really interesting. Scotty.
Now, in your day job, you are a training captain for a very large airline. It's obvious from your YouTube content, and we do watch a lot of it. Mark and I particularly, maybe not so much Lindsay, but Mark and I particularly, that you've got a passion for sharing your learning, like all of us do here on both our shows. What came first? Was it YouTube and the passion for sharing that, or was it being an instructor?
Being an instructor came first. I was never an instructor. I was never a general aviation instructor. I never instructed on the basics of flying. Instead, I was very fortunate. Once I had done the way that the school was done was that you did your CPL IR first, and then there was a break of a year where I did my military training, which was mandatory in Sweden at the time. I did it as an airport firefighter, and then there was a follow-up training where only a fraction, not everyone, but about half of the ones that had gone first course got in to get their multi-engine and their MCC course. And after that, when I managed to get in there and got those licenses as well, I got out to the market just after September 11th. Everything was dead. But I had the great fortune of finding an airline that was actually recruiting at the time, which is the same airline I'm in right now. And when I joined there, so I joined when I was 20 as a 737 first officer. And I worked a couple of years as a first officer. And then things started changing. It wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. So I was starting to look at different opportunities at that point, see if there was maybe another airline, or, if I could get back to Sweden in some way, something like that. And what I found was that my airline was actually recruiting for a training position as a first officer SFI, synthetic flight instructor position. I had never been training up until that point, but I looked at it and I thought that it looks really interesting. And I applied for it, went through the testing, and managed to get that job. And that SFI position, that training position, was a revelation to me. It was so much fun. It was, because I was a first officer, it meant that I couldn't do any checking, right? So it was pure training. And working for an airline that was heavily expanding, it meant that we were taking on a lot of cadets like myself that was in their 20s, that was really eager to learn. And I got to do a lot of these initial type ratings. And to do type rating training, that is among the most satisfying things that I think you can do in the aviation training industry, because you get all of these hyper motivated young people who really want to be there, really want to show that they can do a good job. They've never flown a big jet before in this case. So they're like a blank canvas that you can write on. So you sit there, you go into simulator, they do something, it's not perfect. You can freeze the simulator, you can talk to them, reposition, do it again. They nail it. And then you see that light in their eye, you know, that like, I got it, I understand it. And then they do it right afterwards. And that, I think, the hair is standing up on my arms when I'm talking about it, because that is what instructing is to me, you know. So that's really where my instructor kind of spirit came alive. And we got to do so many things.
And so for those viewers who, you know, don't really know what, you know, a training first officer or a training captain does on a kind of day-to-day basis, can you maybe just provide a little bit of insight? What would be like a typical, if there is such a thing, as a typical training day?
So I'm guessing that there are differences between different airlines in these positions as well. In my airline, a training first officer on SFI could do pretty much anything that didn't have to do with checking. So we did, like I said, type ratings, which are when people come in and they learn to fly the aircraft completely for the first time, from fixed base, which is the very early sessions, all the way up until full flight 8, which is the preparation kind of session before they have to do their skill test to get their rating into their certificate. But we also did recurrent training, which is when you get people from the line that has to do their 6 monthly either operator proficiency check or license proficiency check. And we did a training segment, which is different scenarios that the airline is building. In our case, we have a rolling 3-year kind of program that brings us through all of the systems of the aircraft. So we did that. I also did operator conversion training. People coming in from other airlines who'd already flown the same aircraft, but now needed to learn how to fly it our way. And people converting from the 200, which we were flying at that time, onto the NG, the 800. So it was a very diverse kind of training schedule, and every day was different.
And becoming an instructor, Petter, was it tough? Did you enjoy it? I mean, I think a lot of people won't know that process. I've been through it. Scotty's been through bits and pieces of it. Lindsay's been an instructor in different areas as well. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear your experience there.
To become a synthetic flight instructor, the first step. So they're basically, you become an SFI. It's the same training as being a TRI, which is a type rating instructor. And then there's an extra kind of build on to become a type rating examiner later on, which is kind of the highest training role that you have normally. To become an SFI was the hardest thing that I've ever done. It is by far, and that includes the initial training. It includes the multi-engine single pilot rating, the MCC course. All of it was easier than doing that course, because it is being an instructor, and a good instructor is so much more than just knowing the systems and the procedures. You need to be able to explain it in a way that people understand it. And in order to do that, you need to actually understand why you do things. So you can tell people, well, you need to take the gear down at 4 miles. Gear down, flap 15, landing check is down to flaps, right? It's easy to say. But there will always be a cadet that has read up all of the books and has really reasoned from their training and say, but why?
But why? Yeah. Why can't I just do it at 4.2 miles?
Yeah. And if you don't have a convincing answer to that, first of all, they'll lose a little bit of respect in you, which is not good, but also they probably won't remember, right? But if you have a convincing answer to it, if they can think of like, yeah, that actually makes sense. They have something to kind of hook their knowledge onto, and that will stay there probably forever. So I came into the training, since I didn't have any instructorial experience before, I came into the training and said, well, I'm quite good. You know, I've just read up a lot of my procedures and stuff. This should be okay. And I started off with this grueling training. And I spent every waking hour studying the manuals, studying the instructor manuals and so on, and then going in, doing a session, really feeling myself that this didn't go very well, and then going on to the next one. It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
And I don't know about you, but it was
So, when I became an instructor.
Sorry. Go on, Scotty, you go.
No, sorry, I stepped on you then. The delay is killing us. It's Atlanta, isn't it? Sorry, my fault. When I became an instructor, I learned an awful lot about myself and how I flew. Was that the same for you? Did you kind of learn a bit more about you as an individual and how you flew? And did you think that made you a better line pilot by doing that?
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely. It teaches you a few things. It teaches you to be humble. It teaches you that you don't know everything, and that you really need to read up and understand much more than you actually think you do. Like I said, you come in with a feeling or the picture of yourself that I'm actually quite good. And then you do the instructing and you realize that, no, I wasn't. And that is probably the case for pretty much everyone out there, because just flying an aircraft is one thing, but teaching how to fly an aircraft is a different thing. So it humbles you a little bit, but it also shows you, in that instructor role, you get to see so many different ways of solving problems. Especially when you did recurrent training, you get a lot of very experienced captains and first officers coming in, and you get a lot of inexperienced people with different skill sets and levels that comes in, and they can solve one problem in completely different ways, which makes you realize that it's not just one way to solve something, but you see these common traits that all of the good pilots share, and you can kind of start, okay, so this thing that they actually listen to each other and that they keep an open cockpit environment, for example, and let people speak and smile and keep eye contact, that seems to be the key to a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And also opposite, when you see that when it doesn't work and why it doesn't work, it also helps you a lot. So instructing, like I said, instructing has been the single best thing that I've done in my career. And I think it is for pretty much anyone who has the passion to instruct.
Yeah. I almost feel like it's a multiplier to the hours that you build as a pilot, because you just steal everybody's good ideas and try and navigate around the bad ones. Often without any kind of jeopardy of actually doing the job yourself, which is fantastic, really.
Well, that is one thing. That is one thing. But the other thing that it does is that it also shows you the kind of levels that are expected from you, and that's really important, because a lot of pilots out there are really afraid of going into the simulator, are really nervous before they do Scotty, for example, and I felt at least that while doing this, I saw what the level was that you needed to pass, and it gave me the kind of confidence that I can pass this level. Providing I do the work that is required from every pilot before a check, I can do that and I can get through the pass. So passing is not going to be the issue here. What's going to be the issue then is trying to do it as good as possible and get as much as possible out of the training element. Yeah. And when you go into it with that, you go into a simulator like this, let's see what I can learn from this. You do all of that fear, all of that, those clammy hands disappears, and it just becomes a nice thing instead.
Yeah. And then you move on to line training, I presume, as a captain.
Yes.
Different kind of training. There's something else that you enjoy with that, do you?
Yeah. So when you're an SFI, that we do that, or in our company we did that for a year, and then you kind of leave it. You can keep the ratings going, but you go in and you concentrate on your line flying for your upgrade, and then you upgrade and you get a minimum amount of experience as a captain before you can apply to become a line training captain. And then you start doing that. Now, line training is different. Now, like I said before, when you're in the simulator, it's very pure. It's all about training, and you can freeze and you can explain, and you have loads of time, well, within brackets, to do so. But line training, then you have to operate the aircraft efficiently, safely, on time, and instruct. So for me, it's always been more work to be a line trainer. And but still, obviously, this is in the real environment, so you get the same kind of feedback from the students. because now they're actually flying a real aircraft. So it's different. I still enjoy it, but if I have to choose between the two, doing typewriting in the sim is more fun as an instructor.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Line training is exhausting. I think it's fair to say it's exhausting. And I always laugh. At the end of the day, I always say to the student, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling, really feeling quite tired. And I think, well, yeah, you and me both, buddy. But you have to kind of not show it, don't you? And just kind of go off to the hotel room for a cold shower. Have you ever met a subscriber? I presume you've been kind of online long enough that you'll be seeing, people who got into aviation through you, and do they sit there? Do they ask you to sign their logbooks, in a particular way or anything like that?
Well, I always sign their logbooks anyway. So that, but yeah, it has happened. I have, and I now I kind of see it. When you meet a pilot for the first time or a cadet for the first time, you can see that they kind of. But I've had guys that have said on the first day of line training that I can't believe that I'm doing my first day of line training with you, because I got into this because I saw a video of you 4 years ago, and that is
wow.
Once again,
wow.
that is it's an incredible feeling.
Excellent. Well, that's a great point actually to leap into the YouTube channel.
Yes.
So just for clarity, it is Mentour Pilot, because obviously we got dropped out before I said that in the intro. I don't know if Scott managed to sweep that up, but Mentour Pilot's thousands of subscribers. There's a website, there's Patreon, there's all sorts of bits, merch, and all manner of stuff. How did you get the idea? Where did it all start?
Well, the idea I attribute to my wife, because I was spending a lot of time at home. Yeah, I was spending a lot of time at home, mucking around, being a bit bored, because as an airline pilot, sometimes you have a lot of time off. And this was before. Well, actually, we had our had both of our children actually, so I shouldn't have been that bored. But anyway, she basically said, "Listen, shouldn't you get yourself a hobby, something to do? Why don't you start a YouTube channel or something? You like hearing your own voice, so it should be down your alley." And I thought, not a bad idea actually. Let's try it out, because I was really at the time, and I've always been quite entrepreneurial. I was at the time, you could see that social media was going to become a really important force, and I wanted to learn about it because I didn't know anything about it. And what I've learned so far is that if you want to learn something, you immerse yourself in it. That's the way to learn something. So that's really how it started. But once I did start it, or once I started thinking about what I should be doing, I realized that there was a niche available, because social media at the time, especially for pilots, was mostly very, very negative. Like this is talking 2014, 2015. If you were to go out on the internet and look for how is life as an airline pilot, what can I expect if I work for X airline, you very quickly came into these chat rooms. And in those chat rooms, the only thing you could find was people that was shitting on the industry, that was really, really unhappy with their jobs, unhappy with their lives, and they were just venting. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And I didn't understand that, because I really liked my job. I really liked what I did, my life that I built up around it, and I couldn't understand why. But it very quickly understood that most likely this is because happy pilots are not on internet. Happy pilots are
Hang on.
Well, this has changed since, but back then it's like people only went out onto these chat rooms to vent their frustration, because if they didn't have anything to vent, they were out kite surfing or playing golf or being with their family or something. So I realized there should maybe be a niche for someone who wants to say something positive about the job that we do. I don't speak for anyone else than myself, but I like it.
Mm-hmm. And when your wife gave you that, first idea to get a hobby, and you thought, okay, we'll do a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like, how did your first ideas come about, and how did you kind of pave the direction that you wanted it to go? And do you feel like you've got there?
So my first videos, and it's cringy to look at them now, which it always is. You know, you always suck at something in the beginning. The problem, though, of course, with social media is that you suck for everyone to see. So what I did was basically what we're doing. Yeah, what we're doing now. I sat in front of my iMac and I just talked. I did a 10 minutes monologue about something. The first video that really got kind of viral within my life then was my video about life quality as an airline pilot. And that's when I was just talking about what we were saying, like, okay, these are the good things, these are the bad things. I really like the good things, but the bad things, there I am. But the bad things are there. So I always thought I'm never going to be someone who just sugarcoats it, who just gives that kind of bright blue picture of everything is perfect. Look how cool my job is. No, I'm going to be one that also says, you need to think of these things. You know, if you don't like this part of the job, then this job is probably not for you. And you should probably hear that now before you start spending £120,000 on your training. You should think about that. So that's why.
Petter, I mean, authenticity. I mean, when we spoke, actually, you said the word authenticity, but it seems that does seem to come through. I mean, you know, I think I've just got some screenshots of your merch and all that kind of stuff. It's all very slick. It's quite, you know, YouTube-y, but it's engaging and it's clever, and it's and you've got your kind of reaction videos and also accident videos as well. I guess what sort of elements do you want to sort of achieve with each of these bits, because there's sort of sub channels to your channels? You know, what comes off there?
So what's happened is that the channel, as you start to produce these videos, you will start to kind of branch out, like I've done. Because you need to find more subjects to talk about and to do videos about. I've done over 600 videos now. So you need to find something new and fresh to talk about all the time. But it needs to be authentic. You need to have a kind of core line to follow. And in my case, that's always been to instruct people, to explain things to people. And while I started off doing that for new pilots, the initial thought was, I'm going to do this for people who are on their way into the industry. It has turned into, I will explain this for the general public. So my strength that I've found is that I can explain fairly technical things in fairly easy ways. As in, I can turn something that is really quite advanced and explain it in a way that my mom understands. That has always been my goal, right? If my mom understands what I say, it means that I've managed to reach the right people. You know, that doesn't necessarily have any background in any technical work, but they understand it. So that's why I've gone into,
And I was going to say, because I'll lead into, because Scotty's got a bit of a delay, but Scotty's going to ask you a bit about the accident videos that are a little bit new. I guess they're a little bit newer. Scotty.
Thanks, mate. And thanks for sorting out this delay, because I'm about 3 seconds behind you on everything. So I'm very conscious I'm quiet tonight, but that's so I don't talk over everyone else. Petter, you explain everything so that I can understand. And I get that, because some of the stuff is really complex, and now I understand that. I fly an Airbus now, so it's all complex to me. But you handle your accident report videos really, really well. They're not sensationalized. It's not clickbait, which, you know, you could very easily go down that route. They're not dumbed down. They're always respectful to the crews and stuff. Why are accident reports useful to you in the way that you run your channel? I mean, is that something you planned consciously to use, or is it something that the viewers have asked you for?
First of all, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that this is a question that hovers in the minds of many of our colleagues out there. Why is he going down that route, right? I've stayed away from accidents and for anything that involves loss of lives for many, many years. And I started these accident investigation videos about 6 months ago. And the reason I did that was because I realized that there are some really important learning lessons in here, both for people in the industry, people like us who might not have the time to read through a full accident report and to get all of the facts done. There's loads of it for us, for professionals, to learn from it. But also the general public, especially people who are afraid of flying, interestingly enough, seems to be reassured by knowing exactly what caused an accident. Why did this happen? And I've gotten a lot of feedback while I've done this from people like that who said, well, I thought that aircraft basically just fell down. But when I listen to this and I see that there's often a chain of very, very freak kind of things happening that combine into this accident, I realized that it's not just serendipity. It is a lot of things that has to go wrong, and there are a lot of safety kind of layers that are there to stop this from happening. So for as interesting as it might sound, for people who are afraid of flying is one of them. For people in the industry is the other one. And then there are all of these people out there who are just fascinated about aviation. And the thing is, with an accident report, as opposed to me explaining, for example, how a hydraulic system works on a 737, if I put out a video about that, the hydraulic system of a Boeing 737, very few people is going to have the energy to look at it to the end. But when I build that into an accident report, when I do an accident report and I explain that this happened, this system was involved, this works like this, and it failed here, and this is what caused this, that caused that caused that, then I can actually teach people about the technical systems of the aircraft as well, inside of a storyline that makes people keep watching.
It's engaging. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've got a really kind of varied and far reach from your audience base. You've got professional pilots, you've got, pilots who fly for a hobby, you've got people who are scared of flying. How do you sort of tailor and how do you cater for such a diverse, group of people?
Yeah, that's going to be my problem. Because I recognize that now when I do one type of video, I'll get often very, very positive responses back, but I always get the one, can you not do a video that's more technical instead? And when I do a more technical video, there's going to be people like, well, what about the accident? I'm still waiting for the Tenerife or whatever it might be that's coming up. So it is hard, right? I might well have kind of widened out a little bit too much, and now have to kind of focus it a little bit more. But then again, it's still YouTube. I can put out a technical video and then another type of video 2 days later, and I will have all of them satisfied. The only thing now is that as you go on, the longer you build videos like this, the more professional you need to make them. And you want to, because you want to make good material. And every time you want to make something more professional, it will take you more time. So now a video, back in the beginning of the channel, I would come up with an idea. I'm going to talk about this. And then I would sit and I would record it and I would send it. It would take as long as it took to record it. That was the making of the video. Now a video takes about a week. Like it needs to be, it needs to be done in the Monday and then sent off to my editor and my graphical team. Yeah, there we go. This is the script for one of my my accident videos. That's about 30 minutes worth of video in that script.
Handwritten as well.
Handwritten. Yeah.
We'll come on to that, and I think in a minute, because I like writing things by hand and drawing. And I think there's an interesting element there to the sort of learning process.
Correct.
Scotty.
Petter, it looks like particularly in the start of your videos and where you are now, it looks like you're filming from inside your house. Let's into a little secret. I know the secret, but it isn't your house, is it?
No, it was my house up until my wife kicked me out about 8 months ago.
Not permanently.
Not permanently. No. I still get to go back at the end of the day. No,
for clarity.
Yeah, but you wanted me to tell. No. What happened was that with this process of me wanting the production to become better and better, you start to have things like lighting, for example, and you start to have things like retakes, Before, I did everything in one take. So I would sit down, I would talk, I would take straight out of what I had in my memory, and that was it. But now I have to do several retakes of certain things when I see, oh, I didn't say that right or whatever. And when I was taking up the living room couch to do this, it meant that I could spend a day where the kids were not allowed to come into the living room. My wife wasn't allowed to go into the kitchen. It just didn't, I couldn't continue doing it that way. So now I have actually rented an office here in Banyoles, which is close to where I live. And I'm filming everything in here.
Which is really cool. Wow. It is really cool, and I love all the kit. You sent me some nice photos of all your kit, and you know how it makes it all look so relaxed in one direction, and then in the other direction it's just tech and stuff everywhere, which is brilliant.
And there's more to come.
So pen and ink. Go on, tell us about pen and ink.
This one.
Yeah, I like those. The four colors. They're great. Okay. I used to love those at school.
See, pen and ink. When I write the script, I've just started the script for next week's video, and I have to finish that tomorrow morning. When I write the script, it's not so much that I have to have something to read from. I never read. I always speak straight from what I remember. It's about me learning the story that I'm about to tell. It is changing a little bit. I often scratch it out, write a new one because I need to formulate me in a different way, or I need to include a different detail. So I write the whole story down first, which takes a good 5-6 hours to do. Well, first of all, I have to read through. I should mention that as well. When I do the accident videos, especially, I only use the final report. Like I don't use any outside documentation except for that, because that is a finalized product that has been done by professionals. This is the way it is. I use that. So I read through that, which is normally 120, 150 pages or something like that. Then I write it all down. This is what I'm going to cover. Once that's done, I just put it all down in front of me, in front of my camera, where I have it. So it's normally maybe 20 pages or something. But obviously, I'm not going to read from them. I will just highlight things like years, names, maybe altitudes, things that are important for the story, so that if I forget about it, I can kind of quickly find it. But once it's written, I actually don't use it that much.
Wow.
Yeah. So because a lot of people on here, they like my notes, so I put pictures of my notes, my revision notes on sometimes online, and I never look at them again. It's the act of writing them down that helps me remember. Yeah. And then I just put them in a drawer or give them away.
Yeah, no, my writing has turned into some kind of shorthand. You wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to put that out, and no one would understand it. I have worse writing than a doctor.
Scotty.
I've watched a lot of your videos. Mark has as well. We've talked about this, but looking back, what do you think was your favorite video to do? No, not the one that got the most views. Which one did you enjoy doing the most, you think, out of all videos? Which one, if I were coming to the channel today, Peter, I was only going to watch one, which one would you tell me to watch?
Well, that's a hard one. The one that just springs to mind is the Royal Air Maroc incident, where they almost, they took off and then they had to kind of pitch down and then they had to take off again. And that's a fairly recent one that I did. And the reason I found that so fun to do was exactly, this is the react I did to that.
Good face.
Yeah, because the thing with that is I went into that with one, like I had an idea of what it might have been. And then I started to research. Obviously, there was no final report onto that. There was nothing written about it. There was only some tweets that was available from the airline because it went viral, and obviously they didn't like that. The pilots got a lot of abuse on social media because of that, as it always happens when you put things out on social media. The keyboard warriors are going to go out and say, well, they're stupid because they did this. So I looked at it. And then I started to look at what they actually did. And I started to analyze the video. And I realized that there's much more to this than meets the eye. And I asked the guy who took the video where he was standing on the airport, because I was in contact with him. So I knew exactly what kind of angles he was using in terms of where arriving and departing aircraft was going from. And I started building up a picture, which actually, in my view, and we will never know what was right here, but from my analysis of it, I think that the pilots did a smashing job, a really, really good job. And that's what I said as well. Like this looks like a really tricky situation that they've solved in a very professional way. And they've also reported it. They've done exactly what they're supposed to. They came home, they wrote a report about what happened, and that was dismissed because the investigation team in their own airline thought that they did a good job as well. So I really liked doing that. And it's kind of one of those videos where people come into it thinking they're going to see one thing, and they come out of it seeing a completely different thing.
Yeah. I watched that one again actually this morning, and it is a really interesting video. Petter, so I guess this is probably a really good time. You've touched on it already to talk about pilot careers, the future, because we've all been in the industry a good enough amount of time. You've also got an organization called Airline Pilot Club as well.
Yes.
And we're in this strange sort of pandemic period at the moment. But like when you and I got into the airlines, everything was changing. Okay. So 9/11 was happening, low costs were growing, nobody knew if legacy airlines were going to hang around. And then there was a load of opportunity, and actually the airline industry's done really well in those couple of decades. Where do you think it's going to go next?
Well, it's interesting because when I do these live streams myself, I often get that question, especially from people who are about to invest 100,000 euros into their training. Right? They want to know, am I going to get a job or not? You guys talked about autonomous electrical vehicles. Is the pilots going to be phased out, which you were alluding to as well in the beginning? And I think that now I'm going to be mansplaining and guessing here, but yes.
Let's go for a bit of guessing.
There's a couple of things. You and I, we all know that over the 20 years that I've been in the business since 2001, there haven't been so many big, huge technological leaps, right? The industry, we have been flying almost the same. Okay, yes, there are now approaches. There are Airbus is doing a fantastic job with their aircraft and stuff, but there hasn't been a huge difference to how we fly the aircraft. And that we all know is because of regulatory issues, it's because of safety issues, it's because we built up this really robust safety oriented industry where you can't really do many huge leaps because you don't want to, right? It works well. And given that, I don't think everyone is saying that, well, in 10 years, we're not going to see any pilots anymore. No, rubbish. That's not going to happen. I think that we're going to see differences, and we're probably going to start seeing these vehicles, for example, that are flying people around, but they are not going to be infringing on the job that we do. Eventually, in what I expect to be maybe 25, 30 years, there is a risk to the job. Yes, because that is for every job. Once we have really good and proven artificial intelligence, then there is no job that a man is or a woman is doing that can compete with that kind of brain power. So once we have proven artificial intelligence and people trust it, then yes, then there's a risk of the pilot job disappearing. Absolutely. Up until then, which is we know we're close to, by the way, at the moment, I don't think that that's going to be a risk. So I kind of push that aside.
Yeah.
Automatic, no pilot flying, no. What I think is going to happen, and this is both because of the pandemic and both because of changes in the industry that we've been seeing for years, is that the baby boomers are definitely leaving the industry now, right? The people born in the 50s and 60s, the great generation, is going to retire. They were always going to do that. It's been pushed forward by them changing the pension age from 60 to 65. But eventually they will be old and they will go out. That was projected to happen in 2023, 2024. Somewhere around there, that was supposed to start happening. Okay. Now the pandemic has happened. So a lot of pilots have lost their job. and a lot of pilots are out there. But what's also happened is that a lot of the pilots that were supposed to go maybe in 2 years or so have chosen to pre-retire, especially in the United States. So they've left the industry already. They're not coming back. The young people who lost their jobs, when they are offered to come back, they will come back, but not all of them, interestingly enough. Because another thing that the pandemic has done is that they've realized that flying 900 hours a year is hard work. And maybe some of them have moved on to other industries where they've realized that I can be home on my kid's birthday and on Christmas, and I can have a couple of summer weeks off. So actually, I'm quite happy. I did the pilot thing, done it. I didn't like the way I was fired. I'm going to stick with this. So there's going to be less people coming back in that actually went out. But the changeover is still going to happen, which means that I think that we are going to reach, and I know people will be laughing and kicking me for this, but I do think that we are going to see a problem with crewing the aircraft in about 3-4 years or so.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's always this discussion about, is there going to be a pilot shortage? And I think it's better to think of it as a shortage of skill, of experience. And I think of things like single pilot flight decks, okay, that's wonderful, but how do you get the experience to be on a single pilot flight deck? How does that work?
And who wants to? That is completely changing the job that we signed up for. Who wants to sit there by themselves flying over the Atlantic and talking to no one?
Well, Scotty will go even more feral than he already is. So we've all seen how he's made his bed in the background, and he'll just emerge from his pit.
No, but it is really interesting, and I love speaking to you guys about this, because normally it's just me sitting here kind of guessing. But I think that single pilots, they're probably going to try. I think there's going to be Boeing and Airbus are probably going to come up with options, like maybe you want to try this out, some long legs. But what I think we're going to see is more likely going to be maybe rest options, as in it's going to be certified for one to be alone in the flight deck for 45 minutes, or an hour before, while someone go back to the bunk and sleep. Actual single pilot operation, as in it's just going to be one sitting up in the front, I think is very far away. And I don't think that anyone is really interested in it. And also, this is also a thing that when you kind of zoom out a little bit, and because we have a tendency to only look at the pilots and think, this is really important for the pilots and stuff. When you zoom out, you have to look at the economy, because that's all what matters for an airline. And when you realize that a pilot's salary equates to about a tire change, it's not that important. You can remove one pilot. Yeah, there's going to be a saving there, absolutely. But it's going to be a kind of, I need to change my whole fleet saving.
It's really, really interesting, isn't it? And there's some really interesting chats there. I actually think you're more likely to go to 0 pilots than 1 pilot. I think that's far more likely to operate a dispersed kind of network. But who am I to know?
What we're obviously going to see there is that once they can prove the concept of they're going to have to start with cargo, for example. They're going to have to start flying smaller aircraft and cargo without pilots, potentially like drones, and it's going to permeate in people's minds that it's possible to do, and then it's going to take one step forward. But the day that it steps over to, I'm going to go down to an aircraft and it's just going to be a Macintosh up in the front that's going to fly me from A to B. I mean, the amount of fear of flying that we already have out there, which is about 30% of the entire population, they are just not going to sit down. If you've ever had an iPhone restart on yourself or whatever, that's the only thing you need to have seen.
Can you imagine just as you're boarding, you look in and you see the engineer just doing an operating system upgrade and then leaving and waving you goodbye.
I mean, just imagine a PA glitch. Just imagine taxiing out stuff. Welcome to this flight.
Well, if you ever watch the original Westworld with Yul Brynner in it, which is a classic film, that has exactly that in it. It has exactly that in it. And nothing can go wrong, it says, which is amazing.
Nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
So every week we ask our guests 3 questions. So Scott, I'm going to let you kick off with your question first.
So, looking back, Petter, on everything you've done in your career so far, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the whole, just the kind of group of people that is now turning around the channel, and the information that is shared both back to me and that I can share to them, and you really feel the warmth and the love around it. This was what I set out to do, which was to create I'm losing the words now, not a society, a kind of group where you can go in and ask questions and get questions answered in a positive and a constructive way without being attacked, no matter what kind of experience level that you have. And I have a Discord server that where this is happening. I have an app where this is happening, where we just try to help. It's only positive and constructive feedback, which is something that I think we have a problem with in society today. That no matter what happens, there's always going to be someone attacking. There's always going to be some really poisonous negativity out there, which has a multitude of really negative effects. And the worst of which is that you're unable to show that you don't know something. And the only way to learn is to show that you don't know something. Like, you have to start from somewhere. So that is something that I'm hugely proud of. I'm proud of my career. I'm proud of all that I've done up to this point, my family, obviously. But if you look at the professional point of view and what I've done that's kind of out of the mold, that is probably it.
Okay, so my question then, knowing what you know now, what advice would you go back and give your 10-year-old self?
All right. So find something that you want to do and go for it. All right.
Okay.
It might not be, you might not end up doing that. All right. That doesn't matter. Right. You want to be an astronaut. Well, then laser focused on becoming an astronaut. And that means you need to understand at an early age, when you're 10 years old, you need to start researching what it takes to become an astronaut. You need to look at what schools you want to attend in order to become an astronaut, what grades you need, and just use that as your weapon. Because if you have and this, I'm speaking from my own experience here, if you have a target that you're aiming for, everything will become easy for you. All of the millions of roads that stretches out in front of people when they go into their teens, which is like, I can become a veterinarian, I can become a pilot, I can become this. All of them have different roads, and you need to choose these roads. But if you know what you want to be, and if you know what you want to do, there's normally only maybe 1 or 2 roads, or 3 that you can choose between. And then you can make really educated decisions about those roads as you're going forward. And no teenagers have that. So you have a huge advantage if you're going that way.
Great. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. So final question, and it's been fantastic tonight, of course. What do the next 5 years hold for Mentour Pilot, or for Petter and the family?
You see, the next 5 years is probably they're probably the years in my life that are most kind of hidden in fog for me, the most misty. I don't really know. And that's because up until now, I have been following my own advice. I have been working towards that target. I wanted to become an airline pilot. I became one. I wanted to become a good first officer. I tried to become one. I want to become an instructor, a captain, a type rating instructor and examiner. And I've gone through that road. And I wanted to start a YouTube channel that helped people, especially nervous flyers. And I've done that as well. But I tend to, every 5 years, I tend to kind of build onto something, find something new to do. And up until this point, I've been doing that. Now I don't really know. This YouTube adventure that I'm on has provided for me and the family throughout the pandemic, because I've been kind of furloughed. We've been in Spain. There's a furlough scheme where you get paid when you work, and you don't get paid when you don't work, except you get a government grant, so which is very, very low. So this, what I've been doing on YouTube and what I've been producing has been putting food on the table for me and my family, for which I'm hugely grateful, especially to my Patreons that have been absolutely amazing with supporting throughout this. But it also showed me that there is a different way, right? You don't have to be fully employed. You don't have to work only on one thing. You can do several things. In fact, it's actually crucial that you do several things, because if you only have one basket and it drops, then you don't have anything. So I think that I'm probably going to be going into parallel roads where my airline work, I have to really focus on that, because when you're not flying as much, we all know skill fade and things like that. I have to really focus now to get back into the saddle again and do a good job as an instructor. At the moment, I think that is probably that's going to be hardest to kind of get that back again. But once I'm back in the saddle and I do that, I'm probably going to create 2 parallel roads. And I'm hoping for the YouTube channel, I'm hoping to be able to go out and go to places like, for example, there's amazing job being made right now within the electric industry and within the hydrogen part of aviation. I'm quite passionate about the aviation industry turning the corner against being more environmentally friendly, because that's really, we've been talking so far about whether we're going to fly with one pilot or no pilot. We are actually facing, what if we don't fly at all? What if in 5 years they say no? It's extinction we're talking about. So we need to change, and we are changing. So I'm in contact with a company called Heart Aerospace, for example, up in Gothenburg, which is creating this 19-seater electric aircraft. United just went out and signed to buy, I think 20 of those. I have a little bit of contact with them, so I want to go up and check that out. I want to check out battery factories. We have some up in northern Sweden, Northvolt. And also talk, maybe if I could get someone on Airbus to actually talk a little bit more about hydrogen flight and the challenges there, I would love to cover that as well. Yeah.
Wow. And I think you're right. I think sustainability is probably going to be the story that eclipses all the other stories in the industry. But yeah.
And we've seen, this is interesting because we've seen things like Airbus went out and said, we're going to go for hydrogen flight. In 2035, we're going to have a hydrogen aircraft flying. And now you kind of see how they're starting to kind of move a little bit more about to SAF, airfield, what's called sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, instead. And that's probably because they realized that you need a lot of hydrogen to create SAF fuel. And SAF fuel, you don't have to change the engines. So if you can create that, then we have the solution potentially.
There we go. Nevadita, the lovely Nevadita. Wonderful. Well, because there's a delay, I'm gonna ask Scotty to wrap up, Petter, because we're at the end of our time. You've been incredibly generous with your time, but Scotty, over to you.
Petter, you have been incredibly generous. Thank you so much for coming on. We'd love to come on some of those adventures with you. We could do a layover on the layover. That would be pretty cool. And it would involve beer, hopefully, rather than us doing this, which would be amazing. Petter, thank you so much for your time. You have been exceptionally generous, and we hope we can do this again really, really soon. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being on here. I think that you guys are doing a great job as well, and I'm looking forward to see where the channel takes you guys. So well done, and I'll definitely see you guys around.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cheers, Petter.
Well,
wow, amazing.
What a great guy. Just so easygoing, knowledgeable, really.
I feel like his wife and I should talk about rented accommodation. I feel like that would be, a good conversation starter.
But I've got my own room here. I don't hold anything up. What's going on here?
I'm in rented accommodation now, so no talking to Sharon about that. I've got it already. Coming up next week, we've got Ryan McBride from FourFlight is coming on next week to talk all about FourFlight, and I'm really excited about that. And I like using FourFlight, and we'll find out how it's going to develop in the future and how electronic conspicuity and all those other things are going to be involved in FourFlight, and how pilots get around using it with weather and all sorts of magic stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. But this was brilliant this week.
That was absolutely amazing. And sorry about the glitches.
And
Liz?
Scotty, are you home tonight? Are you flying home later?
I think so. So if anybody wants to follow me, I'll be in an A350 leaving Atlanta for London Heathrow later, which will be fantastic. Fingers crossed. Landing
safe flight home
at London Heathrow.
Good.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Don't forget to if you've come from Peter's channel, don't forget to subscribe, because we always let the subscribers. Thank you very much for coming in, watching us. We've actually tonight broken our previous record, and I think at one point we were through to about 110 simultaneous live viewers, which for us is a new personal best. Thank you very much to everyone who's new to the channel and those who are the regulars. Love to see you again.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody watching in the future, as usual. Well, that's all from us. We will see you probably our Oshkosh special of the week, and we will see you next week.
Bye, Scott. Bye, viewers.
Bye
everyone.
everyone.